right, now, though, we're going to stay international. We've been quite international today. We've been to the United States and talked about the changing political landscape now there. But now we're talking to our regular friend, Professor Robert Patman, though not specifically about issues like Ukraine or anything specific. I wanted to talk in a broader sense about a number of stories and a theme emerging in some news coverage in this country about overseas influence or attempts to influence events in New Zealand, subtly, sometimes not so subtly. And I have to say, as a consumer of news, I often look at these stories and feel they might be beat-ups, or they're slightly paranoid, or maybe we don't have that much to worry about. But some recent writings by our friend Robert Patman suggest maybe we shouldn't be too naive or so naive when it comes to people trying to, well, have a little bit of sway, a little bit of pull here in New Zealand. So Robert Patman joins us now. Robert, how are you? Lovely to see you again.
Good to see you, Sean. Fine, thank you.
All right. Firstly, broad question, is New Zealand a country that anyone would bother trying to influence?
Absolutely. It was during the Cold War, and it certainly is in the post-Cold War era we're living through today. And I think there's two key reasons why the focus, external interest in New Zealand has increased. Firstly, the region we're located, the Indo-Pacific, is really becoming the engine of the global economy, and it contains some of the most dynamic economies, such as Vietnam, China, India. They're among the fastest growing economies in the world. And so, in a sense, if you like, the geopolitical gravity or center of gravity has really shifted to the region which we're located, Secondly, I think New Zealand's international profile has substantially increased in the 21st century. And it wasn't by design, it was more to do with the way our governments have responded to unanticipated events. For example, the appalling Christchurch terror atrocity of March 2019. Many international observers, not least in North America and Europe and in Asia, were impressed by the way the Ardern government responded to that crisis. Many countries, of course, have been confronted by terrorism, but I think it brought it home to us that we're not immune to trends which affect elsewhere. I think the second factor was COVID-19. Views have become more mixed about that, but in the first year of COVID-19, the way the government handled it was certainly struck a chord internationally. So I think overall, although we think of ourselves as a small country, we're seen as quite a significant player, a sort of minor power, a country, to use that awful phrase, which punches slightly above its weight.
God, I hate that phrase too, yeah.
Yeah. But, without going down that cliched route, I think it's fair to say that in terms of external interest in New Zealand, we have certainly ratcheted up. And I don't think there's anything disputing that.
Okay, so if you want to influence New Zealand, you want to have a little bit of sway here as a foreign power. Are we a hard country to put the fix in on? Because I'd say we're relatively naive, but we're also incredibly transparent. It's pretty hard to do anything here without someone knowing, without the neighbours peeking through the lace curtains.
It's a strength and a weak. Absolutely, Sean. It's a strength and a weakness. I think a great strength of our society, it's open and transparent, and by international standards, incredibly honest. I mean, we consistently appear in the top 3 of the most transparent and honest countries in the world. I think Finland and Denmark sometimes are ahead of us, but not by much. And that's according to Transparency International, an organisation which measures these things and looks at corruption. So we're, quite lucky in that sense. But that does mean, I think, that we are a target. Authoritarian states, they don't hesitate to use all the potentialities of penetrating an open and free society like ours. And it may be through the social media, it may be through other mechanisms, but authoritarian states see us as a target of opportunity to some degree. But, in a sense, we should keep this in proportion, because authoritarian states are doing that from a position of weakness. Why do I say that? Weakness? Because they have a very unattractive political model. No one's queuing up, or at least liberal democracies are not queuing up to emulate the one-party state in China or Russia.
Yeah.
So how else do they influence a country like New Zealand, which is an established liberal democracy? They have to do it through normally discreet or covert means of trying to seek influence, either buying influence or trying to carry out some sort of intrusion. It might be cyber intrusion in order to get access to information.
So that sort of stuff is happening. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, in New Zealand, it's pretty simple. If you're Chinese, you just become a sister city, don't you? The Chinese are pretty open about it. Oh, become a sister city. Have the Chinese peace gardens or whatever, Yeah,
but what we've got to keep we've got to keep this in context, Sean. Many countries, not just authoritarian states, are spying. They're gathering information about each other for national security purposes or national interest purposes.
Yeah.
So authoritarian states are not alone in that. It's just that I think they have to resort to it more readily because they don't have what might be described as soft power. They don't have the power of attraction very much, particularly in dealing with liberal democracies.
What about political power and political donations? And boy, there's been some dodgy stuff reported here. We had a National Party MP who was a former lecturer at a Chinese spy school, for goodness sake. And I've got to be honest, none of that ever really quite explained to personally my satisfaction, or I think the New Zealand satisfaction of the New Zealand public. We had that group of Chinese who were kind of convicted of making questionable donations, not just to National, but to Labour as well.
Yeah, but the government did act on that in 2019. It restricted, I think, all foreign donations. They must be $50 or less. Whether that completely eliminates the problem, I don't know.